He wrote that every woman is not a prostitute, but every prostitute is a woman. He focused on the dilemmas and dreams, breakdowns and breakthroughs of prostitutes, and highlighted how they were disrespected and dehumanized by their clients and customers and pimps. He brought to the reader's attention and social, religious, and cultural conditioning of our communities. He dared to touch those taboos that other writers would not touch. He was brave and courageous enough to challenge age-old myths. Manto was also a realist. He tried to depict life the way it is, and not the way it was in the past, or will be in the future, or should be from a moral point of view. He believed the truth liberates us, although many people find ways to avoid truth because they find it too painful to face or too bitter to swallow. When we reflect on Manto's life, we realize that he was a free-spirited and a carefree young boy who idolized Bhagat Singh as a teenager. In school, he was engaged more in daydreaming and fantasizing as a rebel than paying serious attention to his studies. He was a non-traditional person who had little interest in academic achievements. No wonder he failed twice in his matriculation exam. Thrice? He failed thrice in the matriculation exam. But after his father's death in 1932, when Manto was only 20, he started thinking seriously about his life as he loved his mother and wanted to support her emotionally and financially. But he did not want to work as a quote-unquote regular job. Like many young creative personalities, he knew what he did not want, but was not sure what he wanted. At this time, he was fortunate to meet Abdul Bari Ali, a scholar and a writer, who took Manto under his wings and encouraged him to translate world-famous writers into Urdu. Manto took his advice seriously and started translating Russian writers like Chekhov and Gorky, and Western ones like Maupassant in Urdu. Literary articles started taking him seriously. Literary circles started taking him seriously when they read his Urdu translations of Oscar Wilde's Veera and his book Rusi Afsane. Russian stories established him as a serious translator. Translating world literature in Urdu also encouraged him to create his own stories. His first story, Tamasha, the show, was inspired by the tragedy of Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar in April 1919, in which 1,300 Indians, mostly Sikhs, were killed and hundreds more injured when the English colonial authorities fired upon a gathering of about 20,000 asking for independence of India. After his first story, he began writing regularly, and in 1936, at the age of 24, he published his first collection of stories, Atish Pare, Sparks. In 1936, Manto moved to Bombay, where he met film personalities and started writing for film magazines and scripts and screenplays for movies like Kishan Kanhaiya and Apna. In 1941, he moved to Delhi and began working for the Urdu service of All India Radio. In the next 18 months, he published 4 collections as he was very prolific in writing radio plays. Alongside publishing his collection of plays, he kept on writing short stories. मुझे एक किताब याद आ रही है जिसका नाम है आओ. ये वो ड्रामे हैं जिसमें मिंटो जाते थे और एक ड्रामा शुरू करते थे आओ. उसमें सब ड्रामे हैं, 2 किरदार हैं, एक मर्द और एक औरत, जैसे आओ चाय पिए या आओ ताश खेलें या आओ. वो शख्स जो उनको देखता रहता था, जो जैसे चौकीदार टाइप कि ये आते थे, वो पूरा ड्रामा लिखते थे और देख के उसको चले जाते. उसके दिबाची में वो लिखते हैं कि मुझे इन ड्रामों में कोई लिटरेरी या क्रिएटिव उसकी ज़रूरत नहीं, उसकी आप तारीफ करें. उसमें जितना लिखा है, ये मैंने 10 रुपये कमाने हैं जिसके बाद मुझे बियर में पीनी थी. ये ड्रामे मेरे दिमाग में, मेरे पेट में घुस कर इट जस्ट गिव एन आइडिया कि कैसे वो शख्स जो राइटिंग में अपना कैरियर बनाता है और ही नीड टू सर्वाइव, टू स्ट्रगल व्हाट ही हैज टू डू. Just to give you an idea. In 1942, he went back to Bombay and again got involved in writing screenplays for films including Mirza Ghalib. It was during that time that he wrote his famous stories like Dhuan, Boom, and Kali Shalwar. the ones that got injected in serious trouble. In 1948, he migrated to Pakistan, where he lived till his death in 1955. Many of his friends in Bombay advised him not to go, as the film industry in Pakistan was severely affected by the partition. In Lahore, he met many writers and scholars, but he was not as happy in Lahore as he was in Bombay. As a writer, Manto was not interested in the bright and happy side of life. In his creations, he reflected the dark side of life and humanity. When people reacted to his disturbing and distressing writings, he stated, quote, "If you find my stories dirty, the society you're living in is dirty. With my stories, I only expose the truth," unquote. When he wrote stories like Kholdo and Thanda Gosht, he was attacked by the traditional, religious and conservative people and writers. Chaudhry Muhammad Hussain played a significant role in persecuting him. Many magazines and editors refused to publish his stories. Those who supported him and published his stories included Ahmad Ali Qasmi, Arif Abdul Mateen, Hajra Masroor, and Ismat Chugtai. Manto was not only attacked by the conservatives and religious fundamentalists of the right, he was at the same time also criticized by communist writers like Sajjad Zahir and Ali Sardar Jafri of the left. Zahir wrote about his story, Boo, quote, "I once said to Manto myself that his story, Boo, was a very painful and stupid story, because the portrayal of the sexual perversions of a satisfied member of the middle class, no matter how much reality it is based on, it is a waste of writers' and readers' time, and in fact, it is as much an expression of escape from the most important demands of life as old-fashioned reactions," unquote. Similarly, Ali Sardar Jafri, in his book Taraqi Pasand Adab, quote, characterizes Krishan Chandra's story and Majaz's and Faz's poetry as lovely and chaste literature, while Manto's Boo and Noor Mim Rashid's Intiqam, Revenge, in his view, are sick, wounded, and reactionary pieces, unquote. In the end, he concludes with a comparison of Manto's and Krishan Chandra's stories in these words, quote, "The difference between Krishan Chandra's and Manto's stories is this, that Manto's heroes are mutilated men, therefore they cannot be representative because they cannot represent the evolution of life. Krishan Chandra's heroes are courageous and conscious builders of life. They express evolution, therefore they are representative," unquote. Manto was taken to court many times. He was accused of creating pornographic writings, but he always defended his writings and stated that he wrote when he saw injustice and dehumanization. His writings were more of a documentation of protest than vulgarity. He insisted that he was not perverted, rather those people who found some sexual pleasure in his writing were mentally sick. Manto faced all those criticisms and judgments boldly for a while, but then he started to break down emotionally and mentally. Like Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf, and Ernest Hemingway, well-respected writers of the West, who struggled all their lives with their creativity and insanity, and finally committed suicide, Manto became depressed and disillusioned and started drinking heavily, which I consider as a psychiatrist as a chronic suicide. His drinking affected not only his mood, but also his mental faculties. His drinking got so bad that he started vomiting blood and losing his mind. At one stage, he was even admitted to the mental hospital where he wrote his masterpiece, Toba Tek Singh. Finally, he could not tolerate the emotional agony and endure the social torture anymore and drank himself to death. He died at the young age of 42. German philosopher Schopenhauer once said, and I quote, "When horrors of living outweigh the horrors of life, people commit suicide," unquote. Now that we celebrate, this was written a few years ago, now that we celebrate Manto's 100th birthday, acknowledge his contributions to Urdu literature and its gifts to humanity, we also need to acknowledge the harsh judgments he faced in his life. After his death, we realized that he was the Messiah, but in his lifetime he was crucified. Now we want to have seminars and conferences in his honor, but in his lifetime he was censored and persecuted, and his stories could not be included in the textbooks of schools, colleges, and universities. Manto's critics were committed to their ideologies of the right as well as the left, but he was committed to life and humanity. Manto was dedicated to his truth and was faithful to literature. That is why his creations and stories pass the test of time, and he will live in the history of subcontinent and world literature. And in the end, Even when Manto suffered all his life and was harshly judged, he was aware of his personal special gift and his greatness. That is why, before his death, he wrote his own epitaph stating, and I quote, "Here lies Sa'adat as Manto. In his breast are buried all the secrets of the art of short storytelling. Even now, lying in his grave, he is wondering if he is a greater storyteller or God." Unquote. تو یہ مختصر سا آپ کو میں نے اوور ویو دیا ہے کہ وہ شخص جو آج ہم ان کو سیلیبریٹ کرتے ہیں, ان کے ساتھ شامل مناتے ہیں اور ہم ان کو اکنالج کرتے ہیں, وہ اپنی زندگی میں کن کن حالات سے, کن کن دشواریوں سے, مشکلات سے, آزمائشوں سے گزرے. اور